An elderly woman walked up to the bank counter and politely asked the young teller, "Dear, I'd like to withdraw just $10 from my account." The teller, barely glancing up, sighed and said, "Sorry, ma'am. For withdrawals under $100, you'll need to use the ATM." The woman blinked. "I don't know how to use those machines." Impatient now, the teller shrugged. "Those are the rules. Next customer, please." But the woman didn't move. She simply smiled, pulled her card back out of her purse, and said calmly, "Well then, could you help me withdraw everything I have in my account?" Slightly annoyed but curious, the teller checked the account, and her eyes widened. Ma'am, you have over $200,000. We can't give you that much cash here. You'll need to make an appointment." The old woman nodded. "All right then. How much can I withdraw right now?" The teller softened. "We can do $2,000 today." The woman smiled sweetly. "Wonderful. I'll take $2,000. As the teller handed over the cash, the woman calmly counted out $10, tucked it into her handbag, and slid the rest, $1,990, right back across the counter. "Be a dear," she said. "Please deposit this back into my account." The young teller stared, speechless. An Englishman and an Irishman walk into a bakery. The Englishman sneaks 3 buns, slips them into his pockets, and proudly whispers, "Did you see that? That's skill." The owner didn't notice a thing. The Irishman rolls his eyes and says, "That's just stealing. I'll show you how to do it with style." He calls over the bakery owner and says, "Sir, I'd love to show you a magic trick." Curious, the owner agrees. The Irishman asks for a bun and eats it, then asks for another. Eats that too, and a third, gone in seconds. The owner says, "Okay, but where's the magic trick?" The Irishman smiles and points. "Check the Englishman's pockets." A man is in his boat out on the lake with a bucket full of fish that he had just caught. A wildlife officer spots him and pulls his boat up alongside. Seeing the bucket of fish in the man's boat, the wildlife officer asks to see his fishing license. The man tells the officer that he doesn't need a fishing license. The wildlife officer looks down at the bucket and says, "You definitely need a license to be catching fish. I can see that you've been fishing today. You have live fish right there." The man says, "Oh no, those are my pet fish. I just brought them out here for the day to enjoy the lake." "Pet fish?" replied the wildlife officer. "Oh, absolutely. I let him out of the bucket and they swim around and play, but when I whistle, they all jump right back in. They are very well trained." The wildlife officer scratches his chin, then says, "I've never heard such a... Well, I've got to see this." The man dumps the bucket of fish into the lake, then calmly turns and looks at the wildlife officer. The wildlife officer says, "Well, call them back." The man says, "Call who back?" The wildlife officer says, "Your pet fish." "What fish?" replied the man. One night, a guy dropped his girlfriend at her doorstep. As they were about to wish each other good night, the guy started feeling a little in the mood. With an air of confidence, he leaned with his hand against the wall and, smiling, said to her, "Honey, would you give me a kiss?" Horrified, she replied, "Are you mad? My parents will see us." "Oh, come on. Who's going to see us at this hour?" he asked, grinning at her. "No, please. Can you imagine if we get caught?" "Oh, come on. There's nobody around. They're all asleep." "No way. It's just too risky." "Oh, please, please. I love you so much." "No, no, and no. I love you too, but I just can't." "Oh, yes, you can. Please." "No, no, I just can't." "I'm begging you." Out of the blue, the light over the doorstep came on, and the girl's elder sister showed up in her nightgown, hair disheveled, and in a sleepy voice said, "Dad says to go ahead and give him a kiss, or I can do it. Or if need be, Mom says she can come down herself and do it. But for God's sake, and for all of ours, tell him to take his hand off the doorbell." A programmer and his project manager board a train headed through the mountains. They can find no other place to sit except for 2 seats right across the aisle from a young woman and her grandmother. After a while, it becomes quite clear that the woman and the programmer are interested in each other, as they keep looking at each other. Soon, the train passes into a tunnel, and it is pitch black. There is the sound of a kiss, followed by the sound of a slap. When the train finally emerges from the tunnel, the 4 sit there without saying a word. The grandmother thinks to herself, It was very rude of that young man to kiss my granddaughter, but I am glad she slapped him. The project manager thinks to himself, I did not think the programmer was brave enough to kiss the woman, but I wish she hadn't missed him when she slapped me. The young woman thought to herself, I am glad the guy kissed me, but I wish my grandmother had not slapped him. The programmer has a satisfied smile on his face and thinks, life is good. How often does a guy have a chance to kiss a beautiful woman and slap his project manager at the same time? 3 writers, Al, Ben, and Carl, who were attending a writing convention, booked a 3-bedroom suite on the 75th floor of a hotel. When they arrived back at the hotel from the convention, the receptionist told them, I'm terribly sorry, but all the elevators are broken. In the meantime, you will have to take the stairs. Now, Al was a writer of funny stories, Ben was a writer of scary stories, and Carl was a writer of sad stories. The 3 of them agreed that, to make it less boring, Al would tell the other 2 his funniest stories while they climbed from floors 1 to 25, Ben would tell his scariest stories from floors 26 to 50, and Carl would tell his saddest stories from floors 51 to 75. They started to climb the stairs, and Al started to tell funny stories. By the time they reached the 25th floor, Ben and Carl were laughing hysterically. Then Ben started to tell scary stories. By the time they reached the 50th floor, Al and Carl were hugging each other in fear. Then Carl started to tell sad stories. I'll tell my saddest story of all first, he said. There once was a man named Carl who left the hotel room key in the car. Mr. Smith wanted to become a teacher in the worst way, but the only job he could find was as an instructor at an all-female college teaching sex education. His wife was a very jealous woman, so Mr. Smith decided he would tell his wife that he would be teaching a sailboat class at this college so that she would not get angry. He was very happy, and for months all was well. As fate would have it, one day in the grocery store checkout lane, Mrs. Smith overheard a group of girls standing in line behind her talking about college and their instructor, Mr. Smith. The girls went on and on about how great this Mr. Smith was at teaching their class. The cashier handed Mrs. Smith her change and said, "Have a great day, Mrs. Smith, and thank you again." One of the girls in line heard the cashier and asked Mrs. Smith if she was related to the Mr. Smith that was teaching at the college. Mrs. Smith replied, "Yes, he is my husband." Well, that set off a torrent of accolades about how knowledgeable Mr. Smith was about the subject matter he was teaching and about how he got the whole class to discuss their fears about learning the subject. Well, Mrs. Smith was taken aback by what she heard from these girls and replied, "I don't know how you find him to be so gifted at teaching you this course. You know, he only tried it twice in his life. The first time he tried it, he got sick, and the second time, his hat blew off and he just quit." A priest was called away for an emergency. Not wanting to leave the confessional unattended, he called his rabbi friend from across the street and asked him to cover for him. The rabbi told him he wouldn't know what to say, but the priest told him to come on over and he'd stay with him for a little bit and show him what to do. The rabbi comes and he and the priest are in the confessional. After a few minutes, a woman comes in and says, "Father, forgive me for I have sinned." The priest asks, "What did you do?" The woman says, "I committed adultery." Priest, "How many times?" Woman, 3 times. Priest, "Say 2 Hail Marys, put $5 in the box, and go and sin no more." A few minutes later, a man enters the confessional. He says, "Father, forgive me for I have sinned." Priest, "What did you do?" Man, "I committed adultery." Priest, "How many times?" Man, 3 times. Priest, "Say 2 Hail Marys, put $5 in the box, and go and sin no more." The rabbi tells the priest that he thinks he's got it, so the priest leaves. A few minutes later, another woman enters and says, "Father, forgive me for I have sinned." Rabbi, "What did you do?" Woman, "I committed adultery." Rabbi, "How many times?" Woman, "Once." Rabbi, "Go do it 2 more times. We have a special this week, 3 for $5. Once, a man was walking through the forest until a bear suddenly came out from the bushes. It started chasing the man. The man turned around and saw the bear chasing him, and he began to run. As they ran, the bear started getting closer and closer to him. It licked its lips as it saw its prey getting closer. All of a sudden, the man tripped, and the bear loomed over him, excited for its newfound dinner. For the first time in his life, the man decided to pray to God with nothing else he could do. "Oh God, if you're up there, please answer my prayers. I know I've always been an atheist, and even if you help me, I won't be a Christian for long, so instead, I plead you make the bear a Christian instead," the man prayed. Just as the bear was about to shut its massive jaws on the man, it stopped. The man couldn't believe his eyes. It actually worked. "Thank you. Oh, thank you, Lord." He waited for the bear to move off him. It didn't. Instead, it put its paws together and somehow began to talk. "Lord, I thank you for the food you have blessed me with." After their 11th child, a Kentucky couple decided that was enough as they could not afford any more kids. So the husband went to his doctor and told him that he and his wife didn't want to have any more children. The doctor told him that there was a procedure called a vasectomy that could fix the problem, but that it was expensive. "A less costly alternative," said the doctor, "is to go home, get a cherry bomb, fireworks are legal in Kentucky, light it, put it in a beer can, then hold the can up to your ear and count to 10. The Kentuckian said to the doctor, "I may not be the smartest tool in the shed, but I don't see how putting a cherry bomb in a beer can next to my ear is going to help me." "Trust me," said the doctor. So the man went home, lit a cherry bomb, and put it in a beer can. He held the can up to his ear and began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at which point he paused, placed the beer can between his legs, and continued counting on his other hand. This procedure also works in Tennessee, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, parts of Georgia, Missouri, West Virginia, and all of Washington, D.C. Two very active seniors, Jacob, age 92, and Mary, age 89, living in the villages, are all excited about their decision to get married. They go for a stroll to discuss the wedding, and on the way, they pass a drugstore. Jacob suggests they go in. Jacob addresses the man behind the counter. "Are you the owner?" The pharmacist answers, "Yes." Jacob says, "We're about to get married. Do you sell heart medication?" The pharmacist, "Of course we do." Jacob, "How about medicine for circulation?" Pharmacist, "All kinds." Jacob, "Medicine for rheumatism?" Pharmacist, "Definitely." Jacob, "How about suppositories and medicine for impotence?" Pharmacist, "You bet." Jacob, "Medicine for memory problems, arthritis, and Alzheimer's?" Pharmacist, "Yes, a large variety, the works." Jacob, "What about vitamins, sleeping pills, Geritol, and antidotes for Parkinson's disease?" Pharmacist, "Absolutely." Jacob, "Everything for heartburn and indigestion?" Pharmacist, "We sure do." Jacob, "You sell wheelchairs and walkers and canes?" Pharmacist, "All speeds and sizes." Jacob, "Adult diapers?" Pharmacist, "Sure, how can I help you?" Jacob, "We'd like to use this store as our bridal registry." An ex-prostitute is getting married. As the couple gets into the honeymoon bed, she starts to worry about the size of her well-worn. She tells her startled hubby she caught it climbing over a fence. After an hour in bed with her, he asks, "Just how far across this field were you before you realized it was caught?" As a trucker stops at a red light, a blonde catches up. She jumps out of her car, runs up to his truck, and knocks on the door. The trucker lowers the window and she says, "Hi, my name is Heather, and you're losing some of your load." The trucker ignores her and proceeds down the street. When the truck stops for another red light, the girl catches up again. She jumps out of her car, runs up, and knocks on the door. Again, the trucker lowers the window. As if they've never spoken, the blonde says brightly, "Hi, my name is Heather, and you are losing some of your load." Shaking his head, the trucker ignores her again and continues down the street. At the third red light, the same thing happens again. All out of breath, the blonde gets out of her car, runs up, and knocks on the truck door. The trucker lowers the window. Again, she says, "Hi, my name is Heather, and you are losing some of your load." When the light turns green, the trucker revs up and races to the next light. When he stops this time, he hurriedly gets out of the truck and runs back to the blonde's car. He knocks on her window, and as she lowers it, he says, "Hi, my name is Kevin. It's winter in Michigan, and I'm driving the salt truck." In a rural program for farmers, a female TV reporter seeking the main cause of mad cow disease arranged for an interview with a Mississippi farmer who may have some theories on the matter. The female reporter: I am here to collect information on the possible sources of mad cow disease. Can you offer any reason for this disease? The farmer stared at the reporter and said, Do you know that a bull mounts a cow only once a year? Reporter, obviously embarrassed. Well, sir, that's a new piece of information, but what's the relation between this phenomenon and mad cow disease? Farmer, and madam, do you know that we milk a cow twice a day? Reporter, sir, this is really valuable information, but what about getting to the point? Farmer, I'm getting to the point, madam. Just imagine if I was playing with your tits twice a day and only screwing you once a year. Wouldn't you go mad? The TV interview was never aired. There was a man who had worked all of his life and had saved all of his money. He was a real cheapskate when it came to his money. He loved money more than just about anything. And just before he died, he said to his wife, Now listen, when I die, I want you to take all my money and place it in the casket with me, because they want to take all my money to the afterlife. So he got his wife to promise him with all her heart that when he died, she would put all the money in the casket with him. When one day he died, he was stretched out in the casket. The wife was sitting there in black next to their best friend. When they finished the ceremony, just before the undertakers got ready to close the casket, the wife said, Wait a minute. She had a shoe box with her. She came over with the box and placed it in the casket. Then the undertakers locked the casket and rolled it away. Her friend said, I hope you weren't crazy enough to put all that money in there with that stingy old man. She said, Yes, I promised. I'm a good Christian, can't lie. Promised him that was to put that money in the casket with him. You mean to tell me you put every cent of his money in the casket with him? I sure did, said the wife. I got it all together, put it into my account, and wrote him a check. A farmer is in court, suing the trucking company whose truck injured him in an accident. He is on the stand, and the company's lawyer is questioning him, trying to disprove the merit of his claim. Mr. Brown, the lawyer says, did you not tell the responding officer after the crash that you were, and I quote, fine? Well, says the farmer, you see, I was driving my mule to town. Sir, please answer the question. Did you or did you not say you were fine? Well, now you have to understand, I was driving my mule. Sir, stop avoiding the question. Remember, you are under oath. Did you not tell the officer you were fine? The farmer turns to the judge and says, Your Honor, I'm trying to answer the nice man's question, but he won't let me. The judge says, I'll allow it, but it better be relevant. The farmer thanks him and begins, Well, you see, I was driving my truck to town, with my trailer hitched to the back and my mule in the trailer. As we cross an intersection, this big truck blows past the stop sign and smashes into us. The truck splits in two. I'm thrown into one ditch on the side of the road. The mule is thrown into the other, and the truck just keeps going. Now I'm in bad shape. My arm is broken, my leg is broken, and half my ribs are broken, but my mule is in worse shape. From what I can hear, she's screaming and thrashing and making a pitiful racket. I hear tires come to a stop on the gravel, a door close, and footsteps crunching across the road to the other ditch. I heard the mule screaming for a minute more, and then a shot rang out, and it went quiet. The footsteps then start to come my way. I look up to see a state trooper putting his gun back in his holster. He says to me, Sir, I am terribly sorry. Your mule was gravely injured, she was in terrible pain, and I had no choice but to put her down. How are you? Once upon a time in a village, a man appeared and announced to the villagers that he would buy monkeys for $10 each. The villagers, seeing that there were many monkeys around, went out to the forest and started catching them. The man bought thousands at $10, and as supply started to diminish, the villagers stopped their effort. He further announced that he would now buy at $20. This renewed the efforts of the villagers, and they started catching monkeys again. Soon the supply diminished even further, and people started going back to their farms. The offer increased to $25 each, and the supply of monkeys became so little that it was an effort to even see a monkey, let alone catch it. The man now announced that he would buy monkeys at $50. However, since he had to go to the city on some business, his assistant would now buy on behalf of him. In the absence of the man, the assistant told the villagers, "Look at all these monkeys in the big cage that the man has collected. I will sell them to you at $35, and when the man returns from the city, you can sell them to him for $50 each." The villagers rounded up all their savings and bought all the monkeys. They never saw the man nor his assistant, only monkeys everywhere. Now you have a better understanding of how the cryptocurrency market works. On the outskirts of a small town, there was a big old pecan tree just inside the cemetery fence. One day, two boys filled up a bucket full of nuts and sat down by the tree, out of sight, and began dividing the nuts. "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me," said one boy. Several dropped and rolled down toward the fence. Another boy came riding along the road on his bicycle. As he passed, he thought he heard voices from inside the cemetery. He slowed down to investigate. Sure enough, he heard, "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me." He just knew what it was. He jumped back on his bike and rode off. Just around the bend, he met an old man with a cane hobbling along. "Come here quick," said the boy. "You won't believe what I heard. Satan and the Lord are down at the cemetery, dividing up the souls." The man said, "Beat it, kid. Can't you see it's hard for me to walk?" When the boy insisted, though, the man hobbled slowly to the cemetery. Standing by the fence, they heard, "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me." The old man whispered, "Boy, you've been telling me the truth. Let's see if we can see the Lord." Shaking with fear, they peered through the fence, yet were still unable to see anything. The old man and the boy gripped the wrought iron bars of the fence tighter and tighter as they tried to get a glimpse of the Lord. At last they heard, "One for you, one for me, that's all. Now let's go get those nuts by the fence, and we'll be done." They say the old man had the lead for a good half-mile before the kid on the bike passed him. A cowboy who just moved to Wyoming from Texas walks into a bar and orders 3 mugs of Bud. He sits in the back of the room, drinking a sip out of each one in turn. When he finishes them, he comes back to the bar and orders 3 more. The bartender approaches and tells the cowboy, "You know a mug goes flat after I draw it. It would taste better if you bought one at a time." The cowboy replies, "Well, you see, I have 2 brothers. One is in Arizona, the other is in Colorado. When we all left our home in Texas, we promised that we'd drink this way to remember the days when we drank together. So I'm drinking 1 beer for each of my brothers and 1 for myself." The bartender admits that this is a nice custom and leaves it there. The cowboy becomes a regular in the bar and always drinks the same way. He orders 3 mugs and drinks them in turn. One day he comes in and only orders 2 mugs. All the regulars take notice and fall silent. When he comes back to the bar for the second round, the bartender says, "I don't want to intrude on your grief, but I wanted to offer my condolences on your loss." The cowboy looks quite puzzled for a moment. Then a light dawns in his eyes and he laughs. "Oh, no, everybody's just fine," he explains. "It's just that my wife and I joined the Baptist church and I had to quit drinking. Hasn't affected my brothers, though." A wealthy Arab sheikh was admitted to hospital for heart surgery. But prior to the surgery, the doctors needed to store his type of blood in case the need arose. As the gentleman had a rare type of blood, it couldn't be found locally, so the call went out. Finally, a Scotsman was located who had a similar blood type. The Scot willingly donated his blood for the Arab. After the surgery, in appreciation for giving his blood, the Arab sent the Scotsman a new BMW, 5 carats of diamonds, and $50,000. A couple of days later, once again, the Arab had to go through a corrective surgery. The hospital telephoned the Scotsman, who was more than happy to donate more of his blood again. After the second surgery, the Arab sent the Scotsman a thank you card and a box of black magic chocolates. The Scotsman was shocked that the Arab did not reciprocate his kind gesture as he had before. He phoned the Arab and asked him, I thought you would be generous again, that you would give me another BMW, diamonds, and money, but you only gave me a thank you card and a box of chocolates." To this the Arab replied, "Aye, laddie, but I now have Scottish blood in my veins." An Irishman and his wife were awakened at 3 a.m. by a loud pounding on the door. The man gets up and goes to the door where a drunken stranger standing in the pouring rain is asking for a push. "Not a chance," says "It is 3 o'clock in the morning." He slams the door and returns to bed. "Who was that?" asked his Irish wife. "Just some drunk Irish guy asking for a push," he answers. "Did you help him?" she asks. "No, I did not. It's 3 a.m. in the morning, and it's bloomin' well pouring with rain out there." "Well, you have a short memory," says his wife. "Can't you remember about 3 months ago when we broke down, and those two guys helped us? I think you should help him, and you should be ashamed of yourself. God loves drunk people too, you know." The man does as he is told, gets dressed, and goes out into the pounding rain. He calls out into the dark, "Hello, are you still there?" "Yes," comes back the answer. "Do you still need a push?" calls out the husband. "Yes, please," comes the reply from the dark. "Where are you?" asks the husband. "Over here on the swing," replied the drunk. Randy staggered home very late after another evening with his drinking buddies. He took off his shoes to avoid waking his wife, Kathleen. He tiptoed as quietly as he could toward the stairs leading to their upstairs bedroom, but misjudged the bottom step. As he caught himself by grabbing the banister, his body swung around, and he landed heavily on his rump. A whiskey bottle in each back pocket broke and made the landing especially painful. Managing not to yell, Randy sprung up, pulled down his pants, and looked in the hall mirror to see that his butt cheeks were cut and bleeding. He managed to quietly find a full box of Band-Aids and began putting a Band-Aid as best he could on each place he saw blood. He then hid the now almost empty Band-Aid box and shuffled and stumbled his way to bed. In the morning, Randy woke up with searing pain in both his head and butt, and Kathleen staring at him from across the room. She said, "You were drunk again last night, weren't you?" Randy said, "Why would you say such a mean thing?" "Well," Kathleen said, "it could be the open front door. It could be the broken glass at the bottom of the stairs. It could be the drops of blood trailing through the house. It could be your bloodshot eyes, but mostly, it's all those Band-Aids stuck on the hall mirror." Mr. Wilson comes home one night, and his wife throws her arms around his neck, saying, "I have great news. I'm a month overdue. I think we're going to have a baby. The doctor gave me a test today, but until we find out for sure, we can't tell anybody." The next day, Mrs. Wilson receives a telephone call from a clerk at the electric company to tell her the bill has not been paid. The conversation went like this. "Clerk, am I speaking to Mrs. Wilson?" Mrs. Wilson, "Yes, this she is speaking." Clerk, "You're a month overdue, you know." Mrs. Wilson, "How do you know?" Clerk, "Well, ma'am, it's in our files." Mrs. Wilson, "What are you saying? It's in your files. How?" Clerk, "Yes, we have a system of finding out who's overdue." Mrs. Wilson, "God, this is too much." Clerk, "Madam, I am sorry. I am following orders. I have to inform you that you are overdue." Mrs. Wilson, "I know that. Let me talk to my husband about this tonight. He will speak to your company tomorrow." That night, she tells her husband about the call, and he is very angry. The next morning, he goes to the electric company and shouts, "What's going on? You have it on file that my wife is a month overdue? What business is that of yours?" The office woman replies, "Just calm down. It's nothing serious. All you have to do is pay us." The husband says, "Pay you? And if I refuse?" The woman replies, "Well, in that case, sir, we'd have no other option but to cut yours off." The husband says, "And what would my wife do then?" The woman replies, "I don't know. I guess she'd have to use a candle." Ole and Sven were drinking buddies who worked as aircraft mechanics in Minneapolis, and one day the airport was fogged in and they were stuck in the hangar with nothing to do. Ole said, "I wish we had something to drink." Sven says, "Me too. You know, I hear you can drink that jet fuel and get a buzz. You want to try it?" So they poured themselves a couple of glasses of high-octane hooch and got completely smashed. Next morning, Ole woke up and was surprised at how good he felt. In fact, he feels great. No hangover, no bad side effects, nothing. The phone rang. It was Sven who asked, "How are you feeling this morning?" Ole says, "I feel great. How about you?" Sven says, "I feel great too. You don't have a hangover." Ole says, "No, that jet fuel is great stuff. No hangover, nothing. We ought to do this more often." Sven agreed. "Yeah, well, but there's just one thing." Ole asked, "What's that?" Sven questioned, "Have you farted yet?" Ole stopped to think. "No." "Well, don't, because I'm in Iowa."